The lights were soft, the laughter polite, and the air in the studio hummed with that perfect balance of charm and curiosity that Jonathan Ross had mastered over decades. Meghan Markle walked in radiant, confident, and perfectly rehearsed. But what began as a friendly chat on British television would soon unravel into one of the most awkward and talked about interviews of her career. The stage of the Jonathan Ross show gleamed under golden lights. Jonathan sat comfortably in his trademark chair, cards in hand, his sharp humor tucked neatly behind his grin. Across from him, Meghan Markle settled in, elegant as ever. The audience clapped warmly as the cameras rolled, the applause fading into a calm hush. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jonathan began, voice smooth and familiar, "please welcome back to the UK, the Duchess herself, Meghan Markle." Meghan's smile was practiced and gracious, though the corners of her mouth barely moved. "Thank you, Jonathan. It's nice to be back. For a little while." Temporary royalty," Jonathan teased, eliciting laughter from the audience. "So, what brings you to our humble island this time? Tea, scones, maybe a little chaos?" Meghan laughed, but it was hollow, poised. "Actually, I'm here for an awards ceremony next week. A recognition event, really. Then it's back to California, where the sun shines and people smile a bit more genuinely." Jonathan raised an eyebrow, but chuckled softly. "Ouch! Careful. We still have tea and manners here." "Oh, I love tea," Meghan said smoothly, crossing her twangs. "Manners, though, I think California's catching up." The audience laughed again, though this time the humor felt slightly edged. Jonathan noticed it but kept his tone playful. "Well, we're glad to have you. You've certainly made headlines since you left. How's life in America treating you?" Meghan tilted her chin slightly. "It's blissful. Free. I'd say 10 times better than the chaos I left behind. No curtsies required, no tabloids waiting outside yoga class. Just real life," Jonathan nodded politely. "That sounds quite peaceful. I suppose you don't miss much about royal life, then?" Her expression shifted, just enough for the camera to notice. "I miss some people, some moments, but not the structure. Let's call it that, structure," Jonathan repeated, amused. "That's a polite word for monarchy." Meghan smirked. "I'm being polite because we're on live television." The audience laughed, but Jonathan could sense the sharpness beneath the charm. He changed gears slightly. "You mentioned people you miss. Would that include the Prince and Princess of Wales?" Meghan's smile froze, her tone cooling. "Jonathan, I think we both know that question isn't as innocent as it sounds." He chuckled, holding up his hands. "Just curiosity, Meghan. Everyone wonders if there's been any tea shared between Windsor and Montecito lately." "Tea?" she repeated with a short laugh. No tea. Just boundaries. Healthy ones?" Jonathan grinned. Emotional distance. The new royal protocol." Even Meghan smiled at that, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Something like that." He flipped his note card, tone light but probing. "And Harry, how's he adjusting? Rumors swirl constantly about the two of you being under pressure, especially with the media in America." "Rumors," she said firmly. "I stopped reading fiction years ago. Harry's wonderful. Our kids are thriving, and anyone suggesting otherwise probably needs a new hobby." Jonathan gave a good-natured laugh. "Fair enough." "You do seem unbothered." "I am," Meghan said, leaning back slightly. "You learn to be when you stop letting other people write your story." A ripple of applause came from the audience, though Jonathan's grin remained thoughtful, not fully convinced. "Still, the British public's curious. Many feel you've distanced yourself from your roots." Meghan tilted her head, the faintest hint of arrogance glinting in her tone. "Well, Jonathan, when your roots are constantly being dug up by strangers, you learn to plant yourself somewhere else." The host nodded, feigning amusement. "Poetic. That sounds like a line from Suits." The audience chuckled. Meghan's smile tightened. "I suppose everything I say sounds like a script to people who can't imagine I'm genuine." Jonathan opened his hands in mock surrender. "Not accusing, just observing. Though speaking of Suits, people often wonder if you'd ever return to acting." "Acting?" she repeated with a dry laugh. "I think I've done enough of that for one lifetime." Ouch, Jonathan quipped, playing it off with a grin. Well, you've certainly lived a few scripts. She smiled, but the warmth was gone. Haven't we all? There was a pause, the air tightening just a little. Jonathan shuffled his cards, his charm unbroken. You've mentioned before that your life in the U.S. is calmer. Do you ever see yourself spending more time back here? Meghan crossed one leg over the other. Not unless the weather and the tabloids improve. The audience laughed again, though awkwardly this time. Jonathan smiled thinly. So, no plans to settle near Windsor again? No, she replied firmly. I've already done my time here. America's home now. Warmer climate, warmer people. Fair enough, he said, chuckling. Though I think the audience might disagree about the warmth part. Meghan's lips curled into that confident half-smile again. Oh, Jonathan, disagreement is just Britain's love language. The audience laughed again, though this time Jonathan's grin was strained. The exchange had started as charm and wit, but the undertones were now unmistakably sharp. Before we go to break, he said, straightening his note cards, I must say, you do have a way with words, Meghan. Every answer feels like it could end up as a headline. She looked directly into the camera, her voice calm but clipped. That's not my fault, Jonathan. That's yours. The crowd gasped softly. Jonathan's smile froze in place for a half-second before he laughed it off. Touché, Duchess. The light above the camera blinked red, signaling a commercial break. The laughter faded. For a moment, they just sat there, her gaze unwavering, his charm cracking slightly around the edges. When the cameras came back on, the air in the studio felt heavier. Not hostile yet, but sharp enough to slice through Jonathan's usual charm. He adjusted his tie, gave that signature grin to the audience, and began as though nothing had happened. Welcome back. We're here with Meghan Markle, actress, activist, mother, duchess, podcast host, and overall connoisseur of good lighting. The audience chuckled, and Meghan smiled thinly. You forgot human being, Jonathan. That one's important too. He laughed lightly. Ah, yes, human being, the rarest title of all. Exactly, she said, her voice honeyed but cool. It's good to be reminded sometimes. Jonathan leaned back, nodding. Well, I'm sure the British press could use a reminder of that. They haven't exactly made life easy for you. No, she said, her tone flat. They haven't. But that's the thing about noise. Eventually, it just becomes background. He smiled. And yet, you still seem to make headlines effortlessly. Meghan tilted her head, the faintest smirk appearing. Effortlessly? You say that like it's my fault people are obsessed with me. Jonathan laughed, trying to lighten the tone. I didn't say obsessed, just highly engaged. Call it what it is, she said. Britain loves drama. I just happened to be the latest episode. The crowd chuckled uncertainly. Jonathan shifted in his chair. All right, fair enough. But you have to admit, Meghan, sometimes it feels like you add fuel to the fire. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You mean by existing? Jonathan's eyebrows rose, but he kept his voice warm. No. By speaking out, by taking interviews, documentaries, podcasts. People might say you've chosen visibility. People love to talk about my choices, she replied sharply. But they never question why I had to make them. I didn't create the storm, Jonathan heard. I just learned how to dance in it. The line drew scattered applause. Jonathan smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Well said. Though I imagine even the best dancers need a break now and then. Tell me, what brings you back to the UK this week? Meghan crossed one leg over the other, a subtle air of superiority in her posture. An award event. Just a quick trip, really. Smile, wave, say a few words, then back to California where life makes sense again. Jonathan laughed softly. You make it sound like you're allergic to England and... I wouldn't say allergic, she said with a grin that was more dagger than smile. Just intolerant. The audience gasped and laughed at the same time. Jonathan rubbed his chin. That's quite a quote. So California suits you better? Oh, absolutely, she said. The air is fresher. The people are freer. The press doesn't stalk my yoga class. And best of all, the sun actually shines touché, Jonathan murmured. But still, you did live here once, quite famously. You must miss something about it. She paused as if considering it seriously. The architecture, maybe. The food, not so much. The politeness, occasionally. The judgment, never. The crowd reacted with a mix of laughter and murmurs. Jonathan smiled, trying to diffuse the growing tension. Well, I suppose that's one review for Visit Britain they won't be quoting. Meghan smiled faintly. They're welcome to quote it. I'm used to being misquoted anyway. He grinned. You're a tough interview, Meghan. You make even the seasoned journalists sweat. She leaned slightly forward. That's because most of them don't ask real questions. They ask the kind that sound polite but come with a hidden sting. Jonathan blinked, feigning innocence. I'd never. Not yet, she said with a teasing lilt, though her tone carried more warning than playfulness. All right then, Jonathan said, still smiling. Let's test that theory. May I ask about Harry? Of course, she said. Everyone else does. He chuckled. There have been rumors that life in Montecito isn't quite as peaceful as the press releases suggest. Is married life really as picture-perfect as it looks on Netflix? Meghan's lips parted into a smile that was all control. Jonathan, I married the love of my life. We have 2 beautiful children. The rest is noise. And honestly, if people spent as much time fixing their own lives as they do speculating about mine, the world might be a kinder place. Jonathan nodded slowly, letting the answer hang. Well, that's very diplomatically said. I wasn't trying to be diplomatic, she said quickly. Just truthful. Fair enough, he said with a grin. You know, it's funny, you always talk about truth, but everyone seems to hear a different version of it. Maybe that's because they're not listening, she shot back. The crowd murmured. Jonathan smiled again, but this time it looked more forced. All right then, let's shift gears. You mentioned the royal family earlier. Do you still keep in touch, Kate, William? She interrupted him with a sharp laugh. I knew that was coming. Well, it's a fair question, he said. It's a repetitive one, she replied. People ask that as though my phone is a hotline to Kensington Palace. So that's a no? She leaned back, eyes narrowing slightly. Jonathan, let's just say I keep in touch with people who bring peace to my life. The crowd gave an audible ooh. Jonathan chuckled awkwardly. That's one way to put it. Meghan smirked. It's the only way that matters. Jonathan glanced toward the camera, then back at her. You've still got that Hollywood timing. Ever thought about returning to acting? Her smile vanished. Do you ask every guest if they're planning to go back to their old job, or just the ones who've already evolved past it? He blinked, then laughed. Touché again. You really do keep us on our toes. I prefer to keep people honest, she said softly, but there was steel under the words. Jonathan hesitated. The audience could feel it, that delicate line between tension and explosion. Well, Meghan, he said finally, you've certainly given us a lot to think about tonight. I usually do, she replied smoothly. He chuckled, his voice lowering. And a few headlines too, I imagine. Not my problem anymore, she said, her smile unwavering. You can have them. The red light blinked for a commercial break, and as the audience applauded politely, Jonathan exhaled, glancing toward his crew. He'd interviewed presidents, rock stars, and comedians, but this he knew was a storm dressed as poise. When the cameras came back on, something told him the gloves would come off. When the cameras came back on, the atmosphere in the studio had shifted entirely. The laughter that once rippled through the audience was gone, replaced by a curious tension that everyone could feel but no one dared name. Jonathan smiled tightly, trying to reclaim control of the tone, while Meghan sat upright, her poise unshaken, her eyes glinting under the studio lights. Welcome back, Jonathan said, voice steady but forced. We're still here with Meghan Markle, actress, advocate, and clearly someone who isn't afraid to speak her mind. A polite laugh flickered from the audience. Meghan crossed her legs again, that familiar air of confidence radiating from her. I think the world's afraid of women who do, Jonathan. But I've stopped apologizing for it. Fair enough, he replied smoothly. Though sometimes honesty and diplomacy can have a complicated relationship. Meghan gave a soft laugh that didn't sound amused. Only when people mistake politeness for truth, I'm not here to sugarcoat things. Jonathan smiled, tapping his note cards gently. Then let's get to something honest. You've said before that life in California has been peaceful, but if we're being real, is there a part of you that misses being back here? The royal events, the tradition, the spotlight? Her tone sharpened like a knife. Jonathan, I didn't lose the spotlight. I just changed the stage. There's a difference. He raised an eyebrow, the faintest smirk playing at his lips. I see. So you still enjoy the view from the stage then? Who wouldn't? She replied without missing a beat, especially when you've worked hard to own it. I didn't inherit my voice. I built it. The line earned a few claps from the crowd, but Jonathan's eyes were steady now, his humor cooling. And yet, you can't deny your name still carries a royal ring. Whether you like it or not, it's part of your identity. Meghan tilted her head. That's what people like to believe. That identity is something given, not chosen. I left that world behind for a reason. Jonathan chuckled lightly. Still, the irony is that the world keeps bringing it up. I can't control other people's obsessions, she said simply, her voice almost smug. He leaned forward, eyes narrowing playfully. You do realize you're in Britain right now, Meghan? It's kind of our national pastime. We love a bit of royal gossip. Meghan smiled with that familiar mix of charm and steel. And I'm sure that's kept your tabloids quite busy. But luckily, I'm not here to give them new material. Jonathan laughed softly. Oh, I think you already have. The audience chuckled, but the tension hung thick in the air. Meghan's tone shifted, still calm but dripping with irritation. Jonathan, I think your viewers are more intelligent than you give them credit for. They don't need royal drama to stay entertained. He nodded politely. You're probably right. But we do love a good story. Well, she said, smiling thinly, you'll have to settle for authenticity instead. Jonathan set his note cards down. Speaking of authenticity, you've talked about using your platform to redefine what it means to be royal. What does that actually mean? Meghan's smile froze. It means being free from control, doing good without permission, not needing centuries of tradition to justify compassion. Beautifully said, Jonathan said with a grin. But if I may, some people think you've replaced one kind of performance with another. Her gaze turned icy. What's that supposed to mean? I just mean, he said, voice calm but pointed. You've been on magazine covers, documentaries, podcasts, all preaching about privacy while staying center stage. Some people find that contradictory. Meghan leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a razor-edged whisper. And some people mistake boundaries for hypocrisy. It's called protecting my peace, Jonathan. He smiled gently. Protecting peace while making documentaries. Quite the balance. The audience laughed, half nervous, half entertained. Meghan didn't. I suppose it's easy to mock what you don't understand, she said quietly, her expression now sharp as glass. Jonathan held her gaze, the warmth fading from his tone. Oh, I understand perfectly. I just think you've confused confidence with condescension. A hush fell across the room. Even Meghan blinked. Excuse me? You've spent the last half hour dismissing every question with a smirk, Jonathan said evenly. I've hosted this show for years, Meghan, and I've never seen anyone work this hard to sound above the conversation. The audience gasped. Meghan straightened, her expression a mix of disbelief and indignation. I'm not above the conversation. I'm just tired of being treated like a headline. Jonathan's tone hardened. Then stop talking like one. You say you want understanding, but everything you say sounds rehearsed, defensive, royal, if you'll forgive the word. Her voice turned icy. Maybe I sound that way because I've learned what happens when people twist your words. He leaned back, nodding slowly. Or maybe you've just learned how to dodge every question you don't like. That was it. The air snapped. You know what, Jonathan? She said, unclipping her microphone. This isn't a conversation. It's a trap dressed up as entertainment. Come on now, he said, trying to laugh it off. We're just talking. No, she interrupted sharply, standing up. You're talking. I'm done being polite for ratings. The audience stirred uneasily. Jonathan tried to keep his composure, but irritation flashed in his eyes. Polite? Meghan, this show gave you a platform. And you've spent the entire evening acting like you're still the Duchess of Montecito. Her jaw tightened. I'll take that as a compliment. He shook his head, finally losing the calm he'd fought to maintain. You're not a duchess here. You're just another celebrity with the grudge. The studio fell silent. Meghan froze for a moment, eyes locked on him, rage and disbelief flickering behind them. Then she turned sharply, her heels echoing against the stage floor as she walked off. Jonathan watched her go, exhaling slowly, the camera still rolling. He looked toward the audience, half amused, half exhausted. Well, he said dryly, at least she didn't ask for tea. The audience laughed nervously. The red light went out. It would be the clip everyone replayed the next day. The moment Meghan Markle walked out on British television again, proving that sometimes, not even charm can survive ego. The studio lights dimmed slightly as the crew prepared to resume. Though everyone sensed it, the energy in the room had turned electric. Meghan was backstage, pacing, while Jonathan sat quietly at his desk, sipping water, his easy charm replaced by the sharp composure of a man who just watched his show teeter on the edge of disaster. The producers whispered in his ear, asking whether to cut to commercials again, but Jonathan waved them off. Let's finish it, Wade muttered. She wants to walk, fine, but not before the world sees what this really is. Moments later, Meghan returned to the stage. Her expression was calm, even radiant, but there was no warmth left. The applause that greeted her was polite, uncertain, forced. She took her seat again with an air of icy control. Jonathan smiled faintly. Welcome back, Meghan. You didn't leave me for good then? Not yet, she said coolly. I believe in finishing what I start. He nodded slowly. So do I. The cameras went live again. We're back with Meghan Markle, Jonathan said. And I must say, you've certainly made an impression tonight. Isn't that why you invited me? She replied with a smirk. You don't call Meghan Markle for small talk, Jonathan. The audience chuckled awkwardly. Jonathan leaned forward, his grin polite but edged. I called you because I thought Britain might like to hear from you directly. Not through tabloids, not through Netflix. Just you, then perhaps you should have listened, she said sharply. Jonathan's smile faltered, just slightly. Oh, I've been listening, but I can't help noticing that every answer you give seems to come with a lesson, for everyone but yourself. Meghan gave a quiet laugh. That's a very British thing to say. Blame the woman for being confident. Confidence isn't the issue, he said, voice firm but calm. Condensation is. You talk as if you're above the room. She blinked, genuinely surprised. Above the room? That's ridiculous, is it? He asked lightly. You've dismissed every question I've asked, accused me of hidden motives, and then told the audience they should be grateful you even showed up. I've interviewed presidents who've been less defensive. Her tone dropped into a low, icy calm. Maybe you should have stuck with them. A few people in the audience gasped. Jonathan nodded slowly, exhaling through his nose. See, that's what I mean. You could charm an entire country if you wanted, but you keep swinging like everyone's out to get you. Meghan crossed her arms. Jonathan, I've been out to be gotten for 6 years. Forgive me for having armor. He gave a small, sympathetic smile. Armor's fine, but tonight it looks more like ego. The words landed like thunder. The room went still. Meghan leaned back, the faintest tremor of indignation flashing across her face. You really think you can sit there and judge me? I'm not judging, Jonathan said softly. I'm reacting, like everyone watching at home. They wanted to see the real Meghan, not the version who thinks every question's a trap. Her jaw tightened. You don't get to define what's real about me. No, he said, eyes steady. But right now you're doing a very good job of defining what isn't. There was silence, long, deafening silence. The audience sat frozen, waiting to see who would move first. Meghan's expression hardened into something almost regal. Then, in one smooth motion, she unclipped her microphone, placed it neatly on the table, and rose from her chair. Well, she said quietly, I think we're done pretending this is an interview. Jonathan looked up at her, voice steady. I never pretended. I just asked you to be human. She gave a soft, bitter laugh. And you still think you deserve that. Then she turned, her heels clicking sharply against the stage floor as she strode toward the exit. "Good night, Meghan," Jonathan called after her, tone calm but cutting. "You've given Britain plenty to talk about again, though I doubt that was the plan." She didn't look back. The audience, unsure whether to applaud or stay silent, sat frozen as the doors closed behind her. For a moment, all that remained was the hum of the studio lights and the stillness of a host who refused to lose his composure. Jonathan exhaled, straightened his notes, and turned to the camera. "Well," he said with a weary grin, "that went about as well as the royal family Christmas dinner." The audience laughed, tense at first, then louder, relieved to be allowed to breathe again. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jonathan continued, "my thanks to Meghan Markle for joining us. Briefly, and to the rest of you, remember, honesty is beautiful, but only when it leaves room for humility." The red light went off. The music cue began to fade in. Jonathan sat still for a few seconds, his smile finally falling away. He didn't look angry, just tired. "Let that be a lesson," he murmured to his producer. "You can't interview a wall of mirrors." And that's how it ended. A royal return turned television meltdown. Meghan Markle walked off the Jonathan Ross show, leaving behind silence, shock, and a host who refused to bow. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell, because we've got more unforgettable clashes, unfiltered moments, and interviews that spiraled out of control.